Hey y'all, just wanted to start this video by saying thanks for joining us this week. This was kind of what we went over in week 1 of our Cresswind mixed media series. Okay, so we're going to work on water control. And again, like in class, I'm going to have you write water control at the top. And then what we're going to do is go through just the different kind of ways that we can control the water on our page or on our brush. And so I'm going to start with a number 6 round brush. I like round brushes for this because they come to a point. You can control the water pretty well, and it holds a lot of water or pigment in the brushes. Okay, so we're going to get started with that. So get you some clean water. I'm also going to go over kind of what we're using today with paint. I have an ultramarine here from your Winsor Newton set, or you can use any blue that you like. I just like blue for this because it's nice to use when we're doing the thick and thin paint, or the diluted paint. So I'm showing you there. The dilute paint has more of a watery feel. When you add water to it, you should be able to see through it. So that's the difference between your thick and diluted paint. All right, so here, and just make any 6 circles. Not a big deal. Okay, they don't have to be perfect, because also we might use these later on for the 4th week for our project. We're doing a lot of definitely like all mixed media, cutting old things up to use in a new way kind of stuff. So please hold on to all of your practice sheets. So what I'm writing down now is under the first circle, I would like you to write wet and thick paint. Okay, the next one will be damp and thick paint. Right, the next one will be wet plus diluted paint. Right, and then of course after that, again with the damp plus diluted paint. So you see the pattern we're going for here. And the last 2 are going to be dry. So we're not using any water on the page when we put the paint down. So it'll be dry plus thick paint. And then dry plus diluted paint. Okay? Perfect. All right, now that you've done that, let's start by talking about what each of these mean. Okay, so at the beginning where I started, it said wet plus thick paint. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take a clean brush with clean water, and you're going to go inside that circle, and you're going to really give it a good mop. I mean, get it in there, rub it in there real good. And what you want to see is kind of a pooling or a puddle of water inside that first circle. So this goes beyond damp. This is like, it's sopping wet. Okay, and then I'm going to go in with my blue, and it's the thick paint. So you see how opaque that is? I'm not seeing a lot of white underneath the paint when I stretch it. It's pretty darn thick. Really opaque, and I might even add a little bit more here just to get more of a dark blue color when I drop it into the water. Okay, so that's a pretty good amount of paint. And what I'm going to do is literally just put a dollop in the middle, a little coin there, a little circle. Okay, right, and just notice what that does with the edges of that paint in that very, very wet medium. Okay, so now I'm cleaning off my brush. And again, we're going to take a clean brush and our jar of clean water. And I showed you this in class, and it really does work for me. So you dip it and then wipe it 3 times. And you go in and just kind of scrub it. Scrub that in there and feel, you can feel under your brush bristles kind of like the texture of the paper. Okay, you're going to do that once more. All right, do it again. I'm still feeling it's like pretty rough under my brush, so I want to do it one more time to where I'm not feeling as much resistance between the paper and my brush. It's not going to be sopping wet like the first circle, but it's definitely going to glisten. And it's also going to feel a little softer under your brush, like you've broken down that cotton a little bit, okay? And there I go in again with that thick paint. And again, notice how differently this moves in a damp medium versus a wet medium. You get more of those fun, spiky, spindly little branches that come off of it versus the cloudy, soft edges of the wet paint. And it's not moving as much, as you can see in the big droplets of water. That paint's going to keep moving and sloshing around. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean off my brush off screen, and I'm going to again go in with a clean brush and clean water. This time we're using our diluted paint. So as I showed you before, I took some of that thick paint, put it in another little circle there, and I've just added some water to it. And what you want to see with diluted paint is the palette underneath. So, you know, especially with like this white palette, you can tell, oh, there's the bottom of the palette. So I totally forgot that I hadn't put water on there yet. So when you go in with your puddle of water, then you do the diluted paint. Sorry guys, it was a week. So here we go. And take that first swipe down, you know, when you're the first time you get that water in there, and just rub it real good like you do with like the damp. But then as you do that, start pooling that water on there because it's already soaked up a good bit. Okay, got a lot of water. Look at that. Yes. And if you do with the diluted paint, if you want to put a little extra in there, because it's, you know, a lighter color and it'd be easier to see, feel free to do that. But again, because of that beautiful pooling effect, you get more of a cloud of color or a wash. All right. And again, same thing with the damp. I went in with my brush, dipped it, and then swiped it 3 times on the side. And I'm going to do that again till I feel like I'm breaking up that fabric, or that fiber rather, in that cotton paper a little bit, not too much. And then I get a little bit of glistening, not a pooling, but a glistening. Okay, then we're going to go in with our diluted paint. Plop. Love that. Is it as cathartic for other people as it is for me to watch paint spread? I don't know what that is, but I stinking love it. That's like my favorite thing, to watch it go whoosh, whoosh. You know, technical jargon. Okay. And now I'm just going to clean off my brush and kind of dry it off a little bit. And then I'm just going to go in with that thick paint on dry paper. And I love the texture this creates, because you can see the texture, the actual texture of the paper when you go in with wet paint on dry paper, more so than you can when you've already wet it and kind of broken those fibers down. So I really do enjoy that technique as well with water control, when you can start to see kind of the bumps and the scratches underneath your paint. Right, and then I'm going to do one with diluted paint. Awesome. So we didn't necessarily do this in class, but it's the same principle. So what I want you to do is create 6 circles again, the exact same, but what you're going to do this time, and I'm going to speed it up a little bit, is just do kind of like a half circle around the outside. Okay, so you're going to give kind of a crescent. I want you to see how that paint moves when you put it on one spot of the paper versus coloring in like the center, okay, and how it moves around the edges and things like that. So again, here we go with just starting with the thick paint and the wet surface. So wet plus thick paint. And you're going to do the exact same row that you did above, except, like I said, just filling in part of the circle or one side, or maybe doing 3 drops on the side. Just really pay attention to how it moves versus coloring in the entire thing or putting it in the center and watching it move out. I like how in the wet part, sometimes it kind of looks like waves as it travels through the water from one side to the white part of the other circle. Awesome. So now once you've moved through that row of circles, go ahead and label it just like you did above so that we can have notes for later. Perfect. Now that you've done that, I would like for you to go ahead and make, I think I did 10 circles on this page, and in class I said 6 to 8, but honestly, do as many circles as you like to see how far you can get your paint to stretch. I did 10 on this page, so if you want to follow this part of the tutorial to a T, go ahead and put 10. Not a big deal. But if not, go where your spirit takes you. You could even just skip making circles and just do paint swatches on the page if you wanted to. But I like circles because it gives me something to paint inside of. Okay, so with this first circle, I want you to take a clean brush. So you've rinsed it out real good. It's still pretty damp. Not soaking wet, but a little bit damp. And I want you to take your palette. And on your palette where you have the thick paint, I want you to add a little more color to it. It needs to be just the tiniest bit darker, pretty vibrant color, because what we're doing is we're loading that barrel up with paint, and we're going straight in on dry paper, and we're going to color inside of this circle. All right. Okay. And oh, don't you just love the texture of watercolor? It's my favorite. So now, instead of doing water control on the paper, I'm using the brush for water control. So I'm going to dip it in, swipe it twice, okay? And then voila, a new paint color. I love it. So you're just gonna repeat this process as many times as you like to see how far your paint will go. And this is also why I love Winsor Newton, is because it goes a long way. So again, there you go. And you're gonna see this is gonna take a while for me to actually run out of paint. So as you're working with your water and your paint, I want you to notice that we have moved from water control strictly from our page to our brush. And what I mean by that is that we're not wetting the page to create an effect. We are using water in our brush to create an effect or to change the medium. So water control isn't just what you're putting on your paper, but it's also how much water you have in your brush and how much paint you have in your brush. So learning those two things together is instrumental when you're starting your watercolor journey, and that's why I like to start with this. So now that we've finished water control practice, I would love to take you through a moment of just having fun and putting paint on paper. So what we're doing today is mark making with a lot of the products we're going to be using over the next 4 weeks. So you'll see I made circles and there's splatter going on here. And that's actually white calligraphy ink. It's not a watercolor paint. And then I used several other tools like palette knives and stuff like that. And I'll walk you through step by step like we did in class. But I just thought it would be nice to have a video reminder of exactly what we did because there was a lot of steps. But remember, you can't do it wrong, so don't stress out. So you're gonna need your spritzer bottle, okay? Nice clean water in there, a jar of clean water. You're also gonna need your masking fluid or drawing gum. Different people call it different things. I call it masking fluid. And this is the calligraphy ink that I was talking about, the white ink, okay? And then a toothbrush, which is so fun. I love the marks that it makes. I'm also going to be using palette knives, not particularly that one. I really like a one with a straight edge or a more flat square shape to it. So we're going to use that. Okay, your nice wash brush. And then I prefer a larger round brush. So if you have anything between like an 8 and a 12 or a 10 and a 14, that should totally work. We just want one that's going to have a big fat barrel to make big marks, swooshy marks on the page. Okay, you're also going to need some coarse ground kosher salt, like the bigger flakes. Okay, and we've taped down the paper because we're going to be moving it a lot. Okay, the colors we used in class, and 3 of my absolute favorites, because I don't know why, they just give me joy. This is permanent rose, this is your lemon yellow, and your cadmium orange. So they're very, very bright, very, very pigmented. So if you don't have Winsor Newton, that's okay. Just find like a magenta, a bright orange, and a bright yellow, whatever you got. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my palette, and I'm just going to choose 3 separate squares, because I don't necessarily want my paint to mix on the palette right just yet. We'll get into that in our next lesson. But right now I want to keep the paint separated. So I'm fiddling with that off screen, and you'll see me in just a moment. I think, yeah, I'm going to pull this over here so you can see what I'm doing. So there's the orange, the yellow, and the pink. Okay, those are the 3 colors we're doing today. All right. So first things first, let's grab our spritzer bottle. All right, and you're going to see me spritz the heck out of this page. So what I typically do with this, when I'm just wanting to make something very, I don't know, ambient, kind of vibey, whatever word you want to apply to it, kind of background fun, I'm going to spray it side to side and up and down. Okay, and just do a lot. You know, I've gotten a schmutz on my paper. I had to get that off. Sorry. So here we go again, and I'm going to take a wet brush, not a dry one, a wet one, and I'm going to rub that into the page. Get it nice and soaking wet. Of course, you're not going to see a lot of pooling yet, but I mean, it's almost to the point where it would pool if I put any more water on it. Alrighty, now that we're finishing up getting that down on the paper, getting that nice and damp, we're going to take our big fat round brush. We're going to wet that in our clean water. And then I want you to start with the yellow. And the reason I start with the lightest color is because that pink and that orange are super vibrant. And so you don't want it too heavy at first in a lot of color, because we're going to build. And remember, watercolor always dries down a lot lighter than you think it will. So it's always good to start with the lighter colors and then build up from there, because sometimes too much at the beginning can muddy everything up. Okay, and as you can see, I'm just mark making. I don't have really any plan for where I'm putting it. I just know that I want to get like thirds on the page. So a third of the page yellow, a third of the page orange, and hopefully a third of the page pink. And as it's moving around, you can see my paint's just kind of soft. There's no like real sharp edges to it. Because of how much we've wet the page, it's diffusing it immediately. So that's nice. That's kind of what we want to go for. Okay, and here we're adding in the orange. Again, we're just kind of putting it wherever. And I like how it blends with the yellow, it kind of softens it a little bit. But yeah, again, you're seeing that beautiful diffused edge. There's no real sharp edges here. So I'm just going to continue and plop some orange in wherever I kind of feel like it. And you please feel free to do the same. Okie doke. I'm feeling good where that orange and yellow ratio is right now. So I'm gonna go in with this pink. And oh, I just love it. It's so fun. I just find it so joyful. And remember, in this kind of practice, when you do this week, just find the fun in it. Add colors you don't normally see together, or find 3 complementary colors. And we're gonna get into color theory next week. But for right now, I kind of, when I'm doing this, kind of stick to complementary colors. So again, you'll see it's going to blend a little bit with the yellow and orange and make a little bit of red, but that's fine. Again, we're going to be building on top of that. So now that I like where it is, I'm going to take my spray bottle, because the pink's a little harsh in some places, and I want to kind of diffuse it some more. So you just kind of go in and sprinkle it. All right, so grab your napkins or your paper towels, and like we did in class, I want you to start moving that water on your page around by tilting your board. Oh, look at that run. That is so cool. It looks like big fluffy clouds. All right, again, just be mindful, and pardon me if I bump the camera, or you're going to see me do that a couple times in this tutorial, I'm sure. But just move it around till you're happy with how it looks. And if you drip, off the side, just blot it. Or if it's too thick or pools in certain areas, you can take your paper towel or your napkin and blot it. It makes a fun little texture. So now we're going to get to the part where we have our sea salt, or you can use table salt too, okay? So what we're going to do is just sprinkle it willy-nilly all over the page, wherever you want to do it. In one little corner, all over. I like adding it to like the wettest part of the page because I find that it makes the most interesting marks when you do that. So at this point, you could just let it dry on its own, which is totally fine, and come back to it. But if you're impatient like me, use the hairdryer. It's really great. It takes about 1.5 minutes, or 2 minutes, and just make sure anything that's light is strapped down when you're using this thing. But yeah, I love using the hairdryer because it speeds things up, and I'm impatient, so But just enjoy it. Watch as it dries down what the salt does to the paint. I love it. So again, for the sake of time, I kind of sped this up a little bit, but it's cool. You can watch it actually live and in time kind of suck away some of that paint. That salt just draws it right in. And that's why you do it, is to create that beautiful kind of ripply water effect. Okay, and now as we're finding out, it's dry. It's perfectly dry. So at this point, you want to tuck away your hairdryer, and you want to just start brushing off your salt. Now, I'll either use my hand or a brush if it's a little too much, but as you can see, like especially where it sat in the wettest part of the paint, it just created this fun marbled kind of effect. And really wherever it sat on the page is wonderful. But yeah, I just kind of brush it off onto a napkin or a paper towel, trying to make as little mess as possible. I know this actually is kind of the messiest thing we'll do this class series, but the salt can be messy, so just be aware of that. All right, and then it's just a little matter of some housekeeping. Roll that up and kind of set it to the side, and we're going to get ready to move on to our next thing, which you're going to take your clean brush and clean water after you've studied your fabulous pattern and what you've accomplished thus far. If you see any spaces on your page that you think might need a little extra paint, now would be a really good time to do it. So cleaned off my brush, got it back in the water, and you're just going to watch me go back over a few places where, and this is all up to you. So I wanted to see a little more pink in the painting than I was seeing like orange. So I just kind of touched it up here and there. And again, this is just straight on dry paper. We're not spritzing it yet. We're not doing anything like that. We're just going to add the paint first. And it's a really pretty color. I just love this pink. It's so, it really is very opaque. So it does stand out when you see like that, where you just stick it straight on there as thick as you can. It is definitely pink. But in the corners, it kind of looks a little more red because it's, a little thinned out, so you can see it better, or you can see the orange underneath or yellow underneath better. So now I'm just going to take my spritzer bottle, and wherever I see like harder edges that I don't love, I'm just going to soften it up. And I saw quite a few with what I had painted because it was put on dry paper. So now I'm going to do the same thing we did before and just kind of move stuff around. So this would be a good time to just get comfortable with having no control over what your water's doing on the page, which is kind of the fun part about it. That's why we do this more intuitive watercolor art. Is kind of what it's called, intuitive watercolor. You just let your spirit guide you, And also, now that we've done that and I love what I see on the page, I'm going to just go ahead and use my dryer once again and get it done as quickly as possible. So now that that's dry, let's move on to the next step. But I just wanted to point out that little stripy thing that happened, which some people might see that as a mistake because it looks very different from the rest of the picture, but I actually really love that drip that happened when I forced the water with the hairdryer. It just speaks to me. So the next thing we're going to do is take our toothbrushes, a dry toothbrush, and we're going to put it in the thickest part of our paint, okay? And it's, you know, if you want to just put it straight in the paint and not have any water to it at first, that's amazing. Because what that's going to do is create some very defined lines and shapes when we go to make marks on our paper. So as you can see here, I'm just going to start drawing some circles, having some fun. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's just whatever makes you feel good. And I kind of like doing it just on the one side. Just makes it a little more interesting that way, I think. So that's fun. And what I'm kind of noticing here though is that I'm not as pleased as I think I should be with or as I want to be rather with this texture. And so I want to add a little more, like, I don't know, a more diffused pink in there too. It's still really strong, but what I did was add a little water to that, and instead of it just being, you know, one or two little three stripes, you get more of a full brush effect. And so I'm just going in, painting circles, happy little circles. Just channeled Bob Ross. Sorry, guys. And so the other fun thing to do with this, after you've got a mixture of like really dry and some more damp paint. So while your paint is still damp, I love taking a clean wet brush, and not super wet, but just kind of damp itself, and going through the damp paint on the page and just seeing what I can pull off. Okay, so I'm just moving stuff around really. I'm going to go in and make some more swirly whirlies. Okay. So we've got a nice mixture of really dry paint, a more diffused, vibrant kind of paint circle, and then these really light kind of diluted paint circles. I love that. And now we get on to the art gum. This is so cool. And we played with this last night in class with our little throwaway brushes. And I explained that last night, but I'll explain it again. What we do is get a brush that you don't necessarily feel that attached to. Let's just say that. So you start off with a little bit of Dawn dish soap or any kind of dish soap and just really work that into your bristles. It's going to help prolong the life of the brush, so you don't have to keep throwing away your brushes after one or two uses with the masking fluid / art gum. Okay, go rinse that off in your dirty water. It doesn't have to be particularly clean. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open up this lid, and instead of just going straight in with our brush tip, we're going to take the other end of the brush and we're going to mix it up, because art gum does settle and it separates a little bit. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to kind of stir stuff up. Okay, get it mixing in there. And sometimes you'll pull up a little glop from the bottom. Just keep mixing it in there and it'll be fine. So I wipe that end off on my napkins. Then I go straight in with my masking fluid and start kind of splashing it on there, moving it around. What's cool is you can also, and we'll talk about this later in class, we're going to use it again for sure, but you can actually paint with this and create shapes, not just for splashing or creating drips and things like that, although that's really fun. Masking fluid is a wonderful medium, and it creates all sorts of fun techniques and tricks for watercolor and acrylic painting, so you can use an acrylic. Oh, see, this does dry quickly, so I'm like splashing it around in there. But you want to kind of move quickly with art gum. The other thing you can do is if you're going to be a little more fiddly with your stuff, like for a particular painting, you You can pour a little bit on your palette and work that way, but you have to work pretty quickly. But you see, I kind of, at some point, I was like, there's not enough on here, so I start kind of almost pouring it out of the jar. All right, I'm shaking things around, I'm moving things. I really want to get that beautiful, kind of to mirror the streak that's happening up top with that paint. I want to create some streaks with this art gum. I'm just gonna wipe it on there. But you see that big, nice blob in the middle? Yeah, there we go. So that's what we want to see, is we want to see some movement with this masking fluid on this particular example piece that we're doing. We want to create not just some little splatters, and those are nice, but we do have some splatters from the and texture from the kosher salt. So with this, we want to really create some real estate on the page. I'm going to take up some real estate. Okay. So after you're done with that, oh gosh, I don't know what I got in there. Another piece of dried art gum. So what you want to do is close that up pretty soon. You don't want to leave it open for very long at all, because it will dry out and it'll start to separate again. Take your brush, you already put it in the dirty water. You can also rinse it off in that Dawn dish soap again if you want to, and then rinse it out in your dirty water. Absolutely fine too. So I've moved it around, I've jostled it. So now I'm going to take my hairdryer and just kind of dry this up to see what happens. Okie doke. So now we're going to test and see if every bit of it's dry, which is important for this next part, because what we're going to do is what we did right back at the beginning after we dried it the first time, and we're going to go in and add some more paint color wherever you want to see it like pop. So I wanted to really see on the left side of the paper a little more of that vibrant yellow. You see how gorgeous that orange is when it goes over that pink? And just create some variations in shades, so when I pull up that masking fluid, we'll see a different color underneath that more vibrant shade. It helps it to show up more. Okay. And just because you put masking fluid somewhere doesn't mean you have to paint over it, because you'll see I did more on the left side of where I put the masking fluid than the right side, because I just loved kind of what was happening with that right side, so I didn't do it too much. Okay, now what we're going to do is palette scraping, basically using a palette knife to scrape paint on our picture. So I want you to take your palette knife, that big flat one, wet it a little bit, and then go back onto your mixing palette. And I like the orange for this kind of stuff because it pops. Get a good amount on the back, on the tip and the back of your palette knife. And I just want you to practice making stripes with it. Just seeing what you can create. How many like straight lines or versions of a line you can create with it using the edge, using the entire knife. You could also, like, I just dip it in more paint. Hey, look, it spreads better. So again, watercolor, yay. Water solves everything. And so I'm going to go in and create some more lines. I love this part. Oh, that's just so satisfying, creating that wonderful line. And look, you can also do circles with this. This is what I love. Kind of hold it on its end and turn it on its point. There we go. Gosh, I don't know. It's kind of cathartic, honestly, to just create funny shapes on a page and not feel too stressed out about it. I'm going in and softening some of the edges on the stuff I just painted. Okay. Alright, and then I'm going to go back in with this hairdryer. And I'm doing this again. I'm drying it again pretty quickly because I want to take the masking fluid off the page. You don't want to leave masking fluid on for, like, some people say you can leave it on for a day or two. I wouldn't, personally. I think it would tear up your paper. And the particular paper we're using in this exercise is kind of like a practice paper, so it's not like the nice stuff I was asking you guys to buy for your class. So I don't want it to rip. So that being said, make sure everything is dry, and we want to get that masking fluid up. Yeah, oh good. See, it's creating those little stripies again. I love those. I don't know why. I love drips. I think they're so fun. And finally, we get to take the masking fluid off and see what happened underneath it. Okay, so I gave you guys these erasers in class to use for our project. I love these, and I feel like they get the art gum off a little better. You just got to be gentle with it. Versus, I mean, you could always use your hand or your finger if you wanted, or something to scrape it. Just be mindful that it can. Oh, isn't that fun? The paper can tear easy, but also, like, if you're like me and I have kind of like touch sensory issues with my fingers, you could take a dry finger and rub it off, or just, I use the erasers because it gives me the heebie-jeebies when I try to do that. But see how nice this is coming off. Oh, look at that. I just love the texture in like a kind of more intuitive piece like this. Just fun. And again, there's no way to do it wrong. We're just mark making in this part of the class and just enjoying ourselves. Because above all else, art should be fun and good for your mental health. That's why I do it. All right, we are getting the last little bit of this drawing gum masking fluid off. Okay. And I love, so this was a more subtle, like I said, there was like a section of the page that I had the art gum on there, but I just didn't want to like mess up the beautiful cloudy thing that was happening behind it. So I kind of stuck more to the left side of where my art gum was, but oh my gosh, I love what it did. I just, see, it's just so fun. Just making sure, a little housekeeping, making sure everything's off, and I have gotten rid of all the little bits and pieces, and there we go. The last little thing we're gonna do, ladies and gentlemen, whoever's watching, because there was ladies in my class, but there could be gentlemen watching. We're gonna use this white calligraphy ink that I included in the list for the class supplies. And as you can see, my picture is dry, so it's very important that this is dry for it to kind of have the opaque splatter effect that we want. And what I want you to do, and it doesn't have to, again, this is not like perfect placement. This is just about creating some more depth in a picture where there's, if you feel it might be muddy and need to be lifted in a certain corner. This is great for that splatter effect, and watercolor is great for like lifting certain corners and stuff. So what I did was I put 2 droppers full of that ink on my mixing palette, and I took kind of an older brush that I have, and I'm just gonna fill it up with that ink. Okay, and you can do this one of 2 ways. You can tap, 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 which sometimes with this ink isn't the best way to do it, unless you have a ton of ink on the brush, and then it'll do it. It'll start doing it. You'll see it show up a little bit. The other way is to just sling it. So they're splattering a little bit, you see. But this is my favorite part because I like to sling it. Yeah, here we go. And my kids laughed because after I finished this video earlier in the week, I came out of where I was working, and they're like, "Mom, what's on your face?" And I had white paint in my hair, on my glasses, in my face, on my clothes, and which is awesome. You can also do this. It's just fun. You can kind of splatter it with your fingers if you want. You can go in with the tip and make these cool little lines like I did. I was like, I've got more ink on here. Let's get rid of it. So I just went in and started dotting around. Make little patterns if you feel like it. Okay, and again, this is however you feel. Here we go. Oh yeah, and kind of to balance out the circle moment. That was fun. So I have some little circles up there. Use your fingers if you want. You can also put this stuff on your fingers and just drag it across the page if you like. What's great is this stuff washes out. The white calligraphy ink can get on anything and wash out. Clothes, tabletops, anything. Okay, guys. So I think we're done. And there you have it. A beautiful, fun, vibey, interesting looking piece of art that you can keep for other things, framed by itself if you wanted a more abstract look. This is definitely a more abstract look. But again, if you're going to use this and you've made a practice piece and you don't necessarily want to frame it, please keep it, because we're going to use every bit of what we have in the last and final week. So look, you guys did it. I hope you feel great about yourself, because this was a long tutorial and this is not easy when you're first starting out with mixed media and kind of the more intuitive artwork. So look at that. Oh, so fun. All the marks and textures. You can still see where the salt was. It's been a journey, y'all, but it's a beautiful piece. Can't wait to see you next week. Bye.